you can see, I have a little guest here making her debut on the Scotian Canadian channel. Yes, you are. This is my beautiful daughter. This on? We are back, baby. Oh, it feels good. And I don't know if you heard, but the NHL just clarified that the play-in rounds count towards the NHL postseason. So the Habs made the playoffs, baby. Woo! It feels great to be back here with you guys, about to talk some Habs hockey in the middle of the summer. It is so muggy here in Nova Scotia right now. I am sweating, but I'm pumped to be back here with you guys. Let's get right into it and cover off some bases right quick. If you haven't heard, the NHL is returning to play. August 1st is when we're going to start seeing games, and that is when we will see the Habs play. Now, we are included in this in the playoffs right now because the season ended abruptly due to you know what, and because of that, the NHL had to make it fair for the teams who are on the cusp of making it to still have a chance. And for the numbers to work out, the Habs got lucky and they are included. Basically, how it's going to work out is the last 4 teams in playoff spots in each conference will be in play-in series against the 4 teams who were just outside of the playoffs in each conference. So, because of that, the Montreal Canadiens made it and will be facing the Pittsburgh Penguins in a best-of-5 series to determine who gets into that round of 16. The Pens finished 3rd in the Metro Division this year with a record of 40, 23, and 6 for a .623 win percentage, whereas the Habs finished 5th in the Atlantic Division with a 31, 31, and 9 record for a .500 win percentage. And I'm here to preview this entire series, and we have a lot to go over, including individual player stats, team stats. We're going to compare the Habs roster to the Penguins roster, and we're going to go over all the hot topics surrounding this return to play, specifically in terms of this series involving the Habs. Can the Habs surprise? Because I know there's a clear favorite in this series. Which center is going to face Crosby? Which center is going to face Malkin? Does Domi play? But first, I think it's important to mention the head-to-head results between the Habs and the Pittsburgh Penguins this season. In the first matchup this year, the Montreal Canadiens beat the Penguins 4-1. However, it was a close game. It was 2-1 up until the end of the second period for the Montreal Canadiens. But we ended up getting a goal at the end, Shea Weber with a nice wraparound goal, and then we ended up with the empty netter late in the third period to win 4-1. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins won the next 2 games. Pittsburgh winning 3-2 in overtime in that second game. Very close game, and Habs led the majority of that game. But then in the final matchup of the season between these two teams, Pittsburgh beat us 4-1. However, should mention again, it was a 1-goal game up until the end of the second period when there was a bit of a scoring flurry for both teams in that last minute of the second period. So despite there being a clear favorite in this series between the Montreal Canadiens and Pittsburgh Penguins, they had some close matchups this year, and we've all seen the Montreal Canadiens when they're at their best. They can really put it to some of the best teams in the NHL. We had 2 wins over the Stanley Cup winners, St. Louis Blues. We had a win over the Washington Capitals, and wins against some of the other great teams in the league. Always play great against Tampa Bay, and like I just said, Pittsburgh games this season were very, very close. Let's jump right into the Pittsburgh Penguins roster. I want you guys to get a clear picture of what we're going up against in this series. It's gonna be rough, man. So let's look at their forwards and their first line. Obviously, we got Sidney Crosby, an elite grinder, just a very strong lower body, incredible skater, unreal cardio, plays upwards of 22 minutes a night if we're in the playoffs. Strong defensively, and great edge work on his skates. He's incredible below the goal line in the offensive zone, and he's got some very unique dangles coming out of the corners, and he's really hard to read, very deceptive player. We all know he's an absolute beast. 1.1 points per game played this season in the NHL. He's always over that points per game played threshold. He's a beast in the face-off dot, just absolute unit. And then lined up to his left is Jake Guentzel, who those two guys have some incredible chemistry together. Just sneaky, very sneaky. Gentzel's probably one of the best wingers in terms of chemistry that Crosby's ever played with. In 2018-19, Guentzel had 40 goals. He has a great release, very strong, and pinpoint accuracy. And this season, 43 points in 34 games for Jake Guentzel. He is on an absolute tear his last couple seasons. And then we got Connor Sheary lined up on Crosby's right there. And he is just returning to the Pittsburgh Penguins after spending a couple seasons in Buffalo. Couldn't really get things going so much in Buffalo, but when he returned to the Pittsburgh Penguins, he had 4 points in 8 games. Now, the way I'm going to go through all these lines, and very well is not how Mike Sullivan's going to line them up. And the thing, especially with the Pittsburgh Penguins, the thing with their top 6 is all of them have chemistry together. They switch up those lines very often throughout games and throughout the season, and all these guys are comfortable playing with each other. So that brings us to the Pittsburgh Penguins' second line. We got Evgeny Malkin, just a beast, like another, just a physical specimen. Listed at 6'3", 195 pounds, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not sure if I believe that. The guy plays so heavy. He had 74 points in 55 games this season. It's going to be really tough for us trying to match up these centers. I think Phil Deneau is going to be relied upon heavily, but I'll definitely get into that later on. And then on that second line for the Pittsburgh Penguins, we got Brian Rust with the right-handed shot, 56 points in 55 games, having a career year this year with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he was already very clutch for them in their playoff runs a couple years ago. Just great off the rush, and another player on the Pens with a very solid release and great speed as well. Then on the left, we have Jason Zucker, who was recently acquired by the Pittsburgh Penguins from the Minnesota Wild at the trade deadline. 12 points in 15 games played with the Pittsburgh Penguins once he joined them, including 6 goals. But in general this season, 41 points in 60 games played. And in 2017-18, he had 30 goals. He's got a great shot. And then we have Pittsburgh's third line of Jared McCann in the middle, who had 35 points in 66 games, plays with some bite, very responsible third line center, good in the face-off dot. On his left, we have Patty Marleau, acquired from the San Jose Sharks. Now, Patty Marleau's offensive output is coming down the last few seasons. Obviously, he's up there in age, but this is a massive opportunity for him to go for a cup. It's maybe his last shot at a Stanley Cup. Now, despite slowing down offensively, he's still got some pretty significant speed, and he is very strong on the penalty kill. He is going to really help out the Pens penalty kill, which in itself was already very good. And then on the right, we have Patrick Hornqvist, a very solid right winger for the Pittsburgh Penguins, who is a consistent 20 goal scorer, and he plays with some attitude, serious attitude, especially come playoff time. He's a very intense player. Then the Pittsburgh fourth line, very stereotypical fourth line here. Just all grinders. You got Teddy Bluger, Brandon Tanev. Brandon Tanev, who had a couple goals against us this season, including a clutch one in overtime for the winner in the second matchup this year. And then we got Zach Aston Reese, who is a big physical presence for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Go to their decor, you got Christopher Letang, right shot, a Norris quality defenseman. Thanks to guys like Brent Burns, Victor Hedman, Drew Doughty, Christopher Letang's name often gets shuffled down a bit on those Norris votes, but he's an incredible strong veteran defender with 3 Stanley Cups. You couldn't ask for anything better. And Quebecois born as well. In 2017-18, 51 points for 0.65 points per game played. In 2018-19, 56 points for 0.86 points per game played. And this year, he fell right in between that mark with 44 points, but 0.72 points per game played. Maybe up there. I think he's 34 years old, but he's still in the prime of his career as a defenseman. And he scored a really nasty goal on Price this year as well. So he'll be hard to match up against for the Habs. And his D partner, Brian Dumoulin, one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL. Just solid. A two-way defender, but more on the defensive side. I would compare him similarly to Ben Sherratt, just not as much size and maybe a little bit more offensive upside. He's the perfect D partner for Christopher Letang. Then you jump down to their second pairing. You got John Marino, a rookie defenseman who had 26 points in 56 games. He was a former 6th round pick in 2015. Took him a bit to make his way to the NHL, but he's done it and had a great first season, great rookie season with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He went to Harvard, and he was more of a two-way or defensive defenseman, putting up a bit of points in college, but not in the way that you'd expect a guy to come into the NHL and have 26 in 56 games. But the thing is, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, their system and the way they utilize their defensemen, they take a lot of shots from the point. They want to filter and funnel all the pucks right to the front of the net, whether that's shots on net or shots in the vicinity of the net. They love using that inaccurate point shot off the backboards that ends up back in the slot. Scramble ensues, and a guy like Crosby, Rust, Malkin, Zucker comes in and just cleans up the garbage and finishes the play. I think that's how a lot of these defensemen on the Pittsburgh Penguins have racked up the points and spread out the offensive output in their D-core. Guys like Marcus Pettersson, who could be paired with John Marino, typically more of a shutdown D. He's got great physical stature, can really lay the body, had quite a few hits this year. But still, 22 points in 69 games, which was a career high once he joined the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it has to be something with how they utilize their defensemen. Same goes for Jack Johnson, who has an absolute cannon of a shot, but it's not quite accurate. But they don't mind letting him just wire them and funnel those pucks towards the net. And paired up with him would be Justin Schultz, who had 51 points in 2016-17, but since then he's been his offensive game has dropped off, but nonetheless a great puck mover up the ice. And then in net for the Pittsburgh Penguins, very interesting situation they're in, where they have Matt Murray, who you would assume is their starter, won 2 cups with them. But then you have Tristan Jarry, who had a .921 save percentage this year. That's middle-level elite save percentage right there, with a 2.43 goals against average. So you're looking at Tristan Jarry's .921 save percentage compared to Murray's .899, and I don't know, if me as a Habs fan, I would rather face Matt Murray, but I could see them starting with Tristan Jarry. I guess it's all really going to depend on who looks sharper in their training camp, I guess. Let's jump over to the Habs. And as I go through the Habs roster, I want to offer a bit of a different perspective. Right off the bat, it would be easy for me to list off the line one we're all expecting to see. The trio that absolutely scorches the NHL in terms of 5-on-5 possession. And that's Thomas Tatar, Phil Deneau, and Brendan Gallagher. But I want to present something different here, and I really think the Habs need to spread out their skill in terms of offense and defense if they really want to match up against the Pittsburgh Penguins' top 6. So that's why I would slot Jonathan Drouin up on the left wing, which allows us to put Tatar down on the second line. Not only that, we need to get the Jonathan Drouin back that started this season with 15 points in 19 games before he got injured. If we want to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, and if we want Jonathan Drouin to be an impact player for us moving forward, we need to get his game back on track right away. He's fully healthy again. There should be no excuses for him to be putting up points at the elite quality that we were hoping for when we acquired him for Mikhail Sergachev. And I think to jumpstart him, you got to give him good line mates, you got to give him minutes, and that's why I have him lined up there on the left of Deneau and Gallagher. Deneau, who covers a lot of ice and had 13 goals and 34 assists this year for 47 points in 71 games. He also added a very physical element to his game as well, Phil Deneau, putting up 119 hits. So Deneau covers a lot of ice in the middle of the ice, very defensively responsible. He's also strong down low in the offensive zone, gathering pucks, and strong on the rush with his playmaking. Then you got Brendan Gallagher, plays with grit, loves getting dirty in the corners, gathering pucks up, and has that strong net front presence. Also with a great shot off the rush. I really think this line can complement each other really well. Phil Deneau and Brendan Gallagher offer you a style of play that Drouin doesn't necessarily play. Drouin's more of a flashy guy with offensive skill. He's got a great shot when he uses it. Also a very sneaky playmaker. He's a solid skater and moves great laterally up the ice once he gets moving. And if it doesn't work out with Drouin up there on that line, you put Tatar back up there and you get exactly what you're expecting to out of that trio. That brings me down to the Habs second line. I got Nick Suzuki lined up at center. He had a solid rookie season for us this year. He has potentially elite level offensive skill. Also a very strong 200-foot player, very aware, reads the game well, and is great at sneakishly taking the puck away from guys. All he is lacking is experience at this point and just filling out and maturing as a player. He had 13 goals and 28 assists for 41 points in 71 games, and he will likely finish third in votes for Rookie of the Year for the Calder Trophy once they hand that out. So you line him up at center because you know what? I think just in general, the opportunity the Habs have here to participate in the NHL's return to play is massive, and you cannot take it for granted. I think GM Marc Bergevin and Coach Claude Julien should really put an emphasis on player development, especially with the young core of players that is going to be with us for the foreseeable future, and that is a guy like Nick Suzuki. So I think he needs to have a very prominent role in this series and potential playoff run if we happen to get past the Penguins. We got Nick Suzuki lined up with Thomas Tatar on his left and Yoel Armia on his right. Nick Suzuki and Thomas Tatar played off and on together this season on the power play, and they ended up on the same line a few different times and had immediate chemistry. Nick Suzuki did really well feeding east-west passes over to Thomas Tatar, who has some really strong finishing ability, especially with the one-timers and the quick release wrist shots. 22 goals and 39 assists for 61 points for him in just 68 games played. Career year this year for Thomas Tatar. These two being paired back up together could really work. Not only that, Thomas Tatar is responsible defensively. So is Nick Suzuki, despite being inexperienced in the NHL. So that could really work as well. And to back them up with Yoel Armia on the right to cover that physical edge of the game. Yoel Armia with 146 hits for us this season. He can also flash some nasty hands from time to time in tight and can finish quite well in the slot as well, as he showed, putting up 16 goals this year for Yoel Armia. Very impressive season for him. The most goals he's had so far in one NHL season. Now, before I get into the Habs bottom six, I want to briefly touch on line matchups and specifically center matchups. You'd probably assume that you'd want Deneau facing Crosby, the Habs first line center versus the Penguins first line center. I will say though, right out of the gate, Phillip Deneau is going to be relied upon heavily in this series, playing a ton of big minutes, probably against multiple different centers. But I don't think I'd go with the specific matchup of Deneau and Crosby. And not because the matchup of Deneau and Malkin makes perfect sense, but mostly because I would not want any of our centers on our depth chart below Phillip Deneau facing Evgeny Malkin. He's an absolute beast, and I'd just be too worried that an inexperienced and young player like Nick Suzuki could end up getting hurt going up against a physical specimen like Evgeny Malkin, and then really that leaves you Max Domi and Evans, who aren't really experienced centers, even though Domi has played a year or so there. So I would go Deneau against Malkin, and hopefully his NHL experience can
put him in a position where he can defend to the best of his ability of getting Malkin without getting himself hurt and staying in our lineup. And that would leave the matchup of Suzuki and Crosby. I know that sounds daunting, but like I said, the NHL return to play is a massive opportunity for player development. Nick Suzuki is a part of our young core, and I think getting the assignment of facing Sidney Crosby would be an opportunity he would relish and take advantage of. He's a very strong 200-foot player, and being able to get that experience of facing elite competition like Crosby could be incredibly invaluable to his player development. So that's how I'd line it up. That brings us to the third line, and I have Max Domi lined up here at center. Now, there are a lot of questions surrounding Max Domi, whether or not he will play. I'm sure, as many of you know, he is a type 1 diabetic. He was born with it, and diabetes is one of the main risk factors in getting a severe COVID illness. So recently, Max and the team agreed to wait an additional 5 to 10 days before Max makes the decision, or the team makes a decision, whether or not he will play. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion that he will play. That's just my own feel of the situation. I'm thinking that the additional 5 to 10 days here is just for the team to try and get their facilities completely COVID-free. There's rumors going around that a few Habs players may have tested positive for the coronavirus. So you definitely do not want Max Domi around in the building if that is possibly circulating. So wait it out another few days, then a decision will be made. And maybe the 5 to 10 days could be the team may have already told him they don't want him to play, or that he shouldn't play, and maybe Max Domi is looking for that second opinion. Or they, could just be trying to figure it out. But at the end of the day, whatever is decided by Max or by the team, but especially by Max, if he decides to opt out, Habs fans have to accept that and be respectful of that. Health comes first. At the end of the day, it's just hockey, and you should definitely put your health and your career ahead of a Stanley Cup run, especially considering the circumstances and his health factors going into this situation. But to get back to the lines, I have Max Domi lined up at center. We're going to assume he's playing. I have him lined up at center with Kotkaniemi on his left wing, because I think on this line, Max Domi and Kotkaniemi could share the center responsibilities. However, you probably want Domi taking that face-off. Not that he is overly good in the face-off dot. Domi was just 48%, but Kotkaniemi has really struggled in the face-off dot so far in his NHL career, which is totally normal. He's a young guy that usually comes with experience, but I'd say you'd want Domi taking the face-offs there, and then have Kotkaniemi on the left. Now, Domi did really struggle this year after lighting the lamp in his first season with the Habs, getting 72 points. Took a bit of a step back. His shooting percentage came down, was only at 9.5% this year. And he just didn't seem as confident with his shot. And when you're not able to utilize your shot, it will affect his game in a lot of different ways. If you're confident with your shot, if you're able to use it, you're able to produce with it, that would then open up those passing lanes for a guy like Max Domi to sneak some passes through, fake some shots, and hit those passing lanes to his line mates. And then with Kotkaniemi on his left, another guy who struggled in his second season as a Hab, but as to be expected, he was still only 19 years old going into this year. Then he dealt with injury problems, but still went down to the AHL in Laval, put up 13 points in 13 games, including 12 assists, really showed off his playmaking ability in Laval. I absolutely love Kotkaniemi as a prospect. I've compared him to Ryan Getzlaf in the past, and I'll do that again. Kotkaniemi plays with a low center of gravity. He uses his edge work and just his ability to glide to open up passing lanes, and he'll exploit them. He also has no qualms getting into the corners, getting physical, despite not being physical in nature yet. He hasn't filled out. Mind you, ever since the NHL has stopped, recent pictures of Kotkaniemi, looks like he has bulked up significantly. So it'll be interesting to see if that translates onto the ice. I'm really curious to get a very good look at Kotkaniemi in training camp and in this play-in series. And then on the right of Kotkaniemi and Domi, I have Paul Byron. It is great to see Paul Byron healthy and able to get back into the lineup. It seems that whenever he is out of the lineup, the Habs in general struggle. He's only a 35 to 40 or so point scorer. Mind you, a fairly consistent 20 goal scorer at this point, but it just seems when he's out of the lineup, the Habs struggle. And I really think that has to do with the pace he plays at. Any line he's on, he plays at such a high pace. He's always moving his feet, not just the speed that he has, but the pace, and it's contagious throughout his whole line. So I feel like we'll see that again. And Paul Byron and Domi played together in the past in Max Domi's first year with the Habs. It'd be good to get that connection going again. And Kotkaniemi spent some time with Byron in his first year too. So there's already some comfort there with all of these line mates. So I really think that could work as a line as well. Then we move down to the fourth line and we have Jake Evans, who had a 52% face-off percentage in his first 13 games played with the Habs. And now that we do not have Nate Thompson on our roster, I feel like Jake Evans with that right-handed shot will be utilized heavily if he has a good training camp and makes the main roster for the play-in series. Evans' development is going well. This is another guy I'd love to see actually get that role and this play-in series be utilized as a development opportunity for him, because he could be part of our young core moving forward. And then to the left of him, we have Charles Hudon, incredible sniper down in the AHL. Would love to see him start potting some Genos in the NHL as well. So I got him lined up on the left wing of Evans. And then to the right, we have Arturi Lehkonen, a guy who is always in the right place, 5-on-5, always does the right thing. He skates very well, but he just can't seem to finish. I've never seen a guy get so many scoring chances and not finish. So that's why I have him listed down there on that bottom line. But if Kotkaniemi's not working out so well on that third line, Lehkonen could easily slide up, play with Domi and Byron as well. We do have some extras on the roster that could crack the lineup as well. There's going to be quite the competition for that fourth line C spot for the play-in series, and that'll be between Wheel, Paling, and Evans, who I've already mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in training camp and see who wins that role. I'm leaning towards Evans winning it, but we'll have to see. You never know. It could be Paling. And Paling could find some time on the left wing too over Charles Hudon. And that brings me to the Habs decor, where things get very interesting. Now, I'm going to say first and foremost, I think Ben Chiarot on the left and Shea Weber on the right are going to do a ton of the heavy lifting for shutting down the Penguins' top six. However, I do have Mete and Weber lined up for the same reason as I already mentioned. I think this is a perfect opportunity for the development of Victor Mete. The more time with Weber he can have, the better, and their play styles actually complement each other very well. We all know how defensively responsible Shea Weber is. He loves to protect the house, clear the front of the net. He's vicious behind the net with opposing players. He'll gather pucks up and stop cycles quite efficiently and then make a very responsible first pass. And then you have Victor Mete, who's also sound defensively with his skating ability, quick stops and starts to keep up with the opposing players, especially once they're on the cycle. And he's very active with his stick, disrupting plays. And then in terms of offensive ability, we know what Shea Weber is capable of. This season, he had 15 goals and 21 assists for 36 points in 65 games. Great year for Shea Weber offensively. And Victor Mete, we need to see his offensive game get stronger. And this is a good opportunity for him to show what he can do offensively. But like I said, I could definitely see Shea Weber and Ben Chiarot spending a lot of time together, just where they average so much ice time. Weber at 24 minutes a game and Ben Chiarot at 23:08 a game. And they spent a lot of time together this year shutting down opposing top lines. And I could see Coach Claude Julien going back to that as well. But for the second pair here, I do have Chiarot paired up with Jeff Petrie. Our two most physical defensemen. Jeff Petrie with 177 hits this season. Ben Chiarot with 152. I mean, Jeff Petrie, you would think of him as an offensive puck-moving defenseman, but he's got a really nasty physical edge to his game and can really lay the body. Ben Chiarot, of course, as well. So this would be a very tough pair to play against defensively if you're coming down on the rush. Now, Jeff Petrie as well. He had 11 goals and 29 assists for 40 points this year in 71 games. Great offensive year for Jeff Petrie. I believe it was a career year from him. Solid contributor for the Habs this season. Got to have that in this play-in series against Pittsburgh. So then that would leave our bottom pair as Brett Kulak and Cale Fleury. Now, Brett Kulak could spend some time with Jeff Petrie as well. He's not a flashy guy. He's the type of defenseman that if you're not noticing him, he's playing great. And quite honestly, you don't often notice Brett Kulak. He's pretty sound, and that's what you want for a bottom pair defenseman. And I would see him, like I said, either paired with Jeff Petrie, but I have it lined up here with Cale Fleury on the right side. And Cale Fleury had a fantastic season in his rookie season with the Montreal Canadiens. Didn't produce much offensively outside of a nasty highlight reel goal he scored, but he has a nasty physical edge to his game, and you got to have that in a playoff series, and especially on your bottom pair. Cale Fleury will hit guys coming in, trying to enter the zone, but he'll really smash guys down low in the defensive zone with that reverse hit. He utilizes that a lot. Guys aren't expecting it, and I was really impressed with Cale Fleury's physical edge this year with 102 hits in his rookie season, and that was in just 41 games. 41 games, 102 hits. So he was on pace for 204 hits in his rookie season. Absolutely insane. Insane. Now we'll move on to the goalies, and I think it's quite obvious who will be starting for the Montreal Canadiens. None other than the legendary goalie himself, Carey Price, the franchise leader in wins. This season, he had a .909 save percentage and a 2.79 goals against average. Wasn't Carey's strongest year. He really struggled in November, and then towards the end of the season, before the season was cut off, some up and down games. But this rest could do wonders for him, and you know he wants a cup, and we are going to need him desperately if we want to get through the Penguins, and he is definitely capable of stealing a best-of-5 series. No questions asked. It's going to be great to see him back in the crease. I absolutely love watching him play night in and night out. Just seeing how smooth he is in there, the rebound control, the puck movement, just how positionally sound he is in the net. It's always a gift to watch Mr. Carey Price. And backing him up, I have Cayden Primo, once again for the experience. It might be Charlie Lindgren just due to his veteran status. He's been in the franchise a bit longer, but if you really want to develop players, now's the time to sit Cayden Primo on the bench and kind of get him comfortable with that backup role, which he may likely have a year or two from now. Cayden Primo really had an impressive rookie season in the AHL as well. 33 games played, .908 save percentage, and 2.45 goals against average. He had a 17, 11, and 3 record with Laval, so great rookie season for him as well. Solid goaltending prospect for the Montreal Canadiens. Now let's look at team stats. I got a few different categories here, and we will compare the Penguin stats to the Habs stats. We'll start with goals for and goals against. The Pittsburgh Penguins were 13th in goals for this season and 21st in goals against. So about average on goals for and above average for goals against. So looking good for the Pittsburgh Penguins there in comparison to the Habs, who were 18th in goals for and 9th in goals against. So bit of an opposite look there for the Montreal Canadiens. Shots against for the Pittsburgh Penguins, third last in the NHL. They gave up the third least amount of shots in comparison to the Habs, who finished 14th, which is quite average. So not too bad for the Habs there. Power play percentage, 19.9% for the Pittsburgh Penguins in comparison to the Habs, who sat at 17.7%. Little side note there, the Montreal Canadiens power play on the road was very good and did a lot of the heavy lifting for the Habs power play in general. It was dismal at home, but very good on the road. So that could help us actually, where we're not going to be playing in our home rink. Won't be fans around. It'll be just purely focused on hockey. I think that could actually do the Habs wonders in terms of not gripping their sticks so hard on the power play. Then we have penalty kill percentage. The Pittsburgh Penguins at 82.1%, good enough for 10th in the NHL, so in the top 10 for penalty kill, and that did not include Patrick Marleau for most of the season, so he'll improve their penalty kill as well. Then we have the Habs at 78.7%, 19th in the NHL, so definitely has to be better. Now we'll move on to scoring chances for the Penguins, and 23rd in the NHL. However, their shooting percentage is 10%. So when they get scoring chances, they finish. And scoring chances against, 27th in the league. So a testament to how well they defend. High danger scoring chances, the Penguins were 16th in the NHL, so about average. However, high danger goals, first in the NHL. So when they get their chances, they put it in the back of the net. Now, in comparison, the Montreal Canadiens scoring chances for, third in the NHL, but a shooting percentage of 8.6%. A serious lack of ability to finish. Scoring chances against, 22nd in the league, so not bad there. They don't give up a whole lot. High danger chances, first in the NHL, but high danger goals, 18th. That is the worst. That's so bad. You got first in high danger scoring chances, but you're 18th in the league for high danger goals. Unbelievable. Once again, testament to their lack of ability to finish. So comparing the Habs forward group to the Pittsburgh Penguins forward group, it's clear who has the general advantage. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they're absolutely stacked, especially in their top six. You might say the Habs might have a slight advantage in terms of offensive output for their third line, but in general, the Pens have the better forward lineup, plain as day. Now, if you look at the D groups, you'd almost look and say that the Canadiens have the advantage here, because realistically, you look at it, the Canadiens have Jeff Petrie to the Penguins' Chris Letang. You can cancel those out. Then you have Ben Sherratt to Brian Dumoulin. I'd say Dumoulin has the slight advantage there, but you can cancel those out, let's say. And that leaves Shea Weber, and the Penguins do not have anyone that can match Shea Weber once you cancel those players out. However, as a group, when you consider the Penguins have Marcus Pettersson, that rookie John Marino, Jack Johnson, and Justin Schultz, that's a lot of NHL experience, veteran experience, and especially ability to shut plays down, whereas the Habs are lacking that experience and ability to play sound defensively consistently with Victor Mete, Brett Kulak, Cale Fleury, Noah Juleson, and players like this. Now for goaltending, you got to give the Montreal Canadiens the advantage here. It's the only portion of the team when you compare the Pens and the Habs where you can give the Habs the advantage, even though Tristan Jarry had better stats than Carey Price. I mean, it's Carey Price. It goes without saying he is the best goalie between Price, Matt Murray, and Tristan Jarry. However, when you take into consideration the decors, if Price isn't going to get sound defense in front of him, it's going to be hard for him to do his job. Whereas the Pens are clearly strong defensively, and it makes that the jobs on their goaltending a lot easier. Montreal Canadiens keys to victory in this series. The Pens team play their top six heavy over 20 minutes a night, and the Habs will be rolling four lines. That's just how they play. End of the day, we need one of their centers to be shut down, either Malkin or Crosby, so Deneau has his work cut out ahead of him. The Habs also need to force the Pittsburgh defense to make mistakes in their own zone, so we need to see a heavy forecheck and have them making quick decisions and turning the puck over. Speaking of turnovers, Habs need to watch turnovers in their own zone because Pittsburgh will capitalize on all mistakes, and not just in the defensive zone. Montreal has a tendency for bad turnovers in their own offensive zone, which lead to odd man rushes, leaving Carey out to dry. We cannot see that happening. Another key to victory is that the Montreal Canadiens need to have a very strong penalty kill and block a ton of shots. And last but not least, of course, we are gonna need some of Carey's patented magic. So that's about it for my Montreal Canadiens, Pittsburgh Penguins NHL play-in series preview. I hope you guys enjoyed. Can't wait to continue talking hockey with you, as I'm going to get back to doing post-game reaction videos for all the Habs play-in series games. So hopefully we can go on a long run here and have some fun. Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. hit that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Scotian Canadian.
Go Habs, go, baby.